Today, I'm going to talk about more resources that you can find on Google for doing scholarly and academic kind of work. So today's topic is what can you get from Scholar, what can you get from books, news, all of the other things we can do as well. So Google's got a ton of resources, and what we'll do today is talk about some of them and actually see what we can do with them. So here we are on Google homepage, and what I want to do is go immediately to Scholar. I can click on the Scholar tab, and that takes me to Scholar, and I'll do a search like this, coral bleaching. Here are the results. We start at the very top. You see something from 1999, something from 1993, just below that, and so on. One thing to know is when you do an open-ended topic like this, coral bleaching, the results are returned in rank order. That is, we compute what order we think are the most relevant articles to you and order them from top to bottom like that. You can see over here on the right-hand side, there are about 19,900 different results. That number will change day to day, moment to moment. But for right at the moment, there are roughly 20,000 different articles. The question is, how would you sort those? Answer, what we do is compute the relevance of that based on the frequency with which people look at these articles and the connections by which these articles are connected to other articles. We're trying to do the same thing we do with PageRank. This is a Scholar rank kind of result. Now notice it's not exactly the same. If you look here, you'll see that the citation number here, like this one, cited by 1,400, then the next one cited by 286, it's not necessarily exactly the same as the number of citations. If we click on the cited by, you can see that there are a bunch of articles here. These are all articles that refer to the article we were just looking at. So watch, I'll do that again. Go back to the original page. This is this article, Climate Change, Coral Bleaching, and the Future of the World's Coral Reefs. It's cited by 1,400 articles. That is, these are all other articles that have links to, references to in their citations, back to this article. You can see the most highly rated one at the very top, and you can go through and see all of these. That's what the cited by link does, is it tells you roughly the connection between this document and other documents out in the world. Other things to note is if you go to the far right-hand side, you'll see right here this PDF from site. So this link actually will take you to the article, a PDF copy of that article. Notice that not all articles have that link. So here, for example, the second document, ultraviolet radiation and coral bleaching, there's no PDF link to it. There can be many reasons for that. But one thing to know, secret tip of the trade, is that if you write to the author, they will often send you a pre-publication PDF or a copy of it in some form. There may be copyright reasons why they can't actually give you this original document here, but sometimes authors, I found, were more than happy to send you a scan of that original document. Okay, so that's how Scholar works to first order. You do a query, you get the result back, go. Now, one of the things to know is that you can use everything you know about regular Google search in that line, in that search line. So for example, here you see I've done coral bleaching, but I've added the cite : operator. What this does is, just as in regular Google search, it limits the search just to that site, in this case, stanford.edu. So if you look down here, all these documents are now from a Stanford EDU site. In essence, what we've done is asked for coral bleaching articles from Stanford. Okay? Notice that you can do many more things like that. You can use the minus sign to exclude articles from an institution. So minus stanford.edu, for example. Another kind of thing you can do is, for example, do a single query like this. Here we're searching for sense-making, topic we talked about before. So here at the very top, you can see there's a book. The second article is an article by Brenda Durbin. The third one is another famous article by Carl Weick. Okay. Now, the citation link here is, you can see roughly, this is 9,700 different articles. That's a pretty important book. That's one way you can start to gauge sort of the informal sense of how important a document is. We'll come back to this topic, the citation value, the H-index, and so on later. But you can also see right next to it is this thing called related articles. Related articles are articles that are not necessarily linked to or cited by this particular paper, but are topically related. So in essence, this is a way for you to expand the range of topics that you might explore on this particular subject. And the library search link that you see below the subject header here is a link to OCLC. That's the online catalog run. It's also called WorldCat. And what you see here, when I click on it, is it takes me to this WorldCat website, which has links to, it's basically a meta catalog to many of the world's participating libraries. In our case, what this does is it shows us where this book appears. You can see here, I put in my location as Kodiak, Alaska. The closest copy of that book, if you're in Kodiak, is at the Anchorage Consortium Library at the University of Alaska, Anchorage. I'm going to change my location here. I'm going to put in Mountain View, which is where I'm at like right now. And now I can see this book, Sense Making Organizations, is available at Stanford University Graduate School, 6 miles from where I'm at right now. This is an immensely handy trick, particularly for those books that are really too expensive to buy. You can go and use Google to find out those locations in libraries nearby. Often use Interlibrary Loan to get it. The last thing on that bottom line is the versions count. So you see here all 7 versions. In Scholar's crawling of the web, it has discovered 7 different versions of that document, 7 different versions of that book. Let's actually click on that and see what that looks like. So if I click on all 7 versions, the versions thing shows me here's the book. It's in books.google.com. Here's another copy in France. Here's an incomplete citation right here, and so on. This is awfully nice for locating multiple variations on it, say different volumes, different editions, and so on. Now, one of the things to know about Scholar is that often I'll use advanced search for Scholar. The advanced search click link is right here. It's called Advanced Scholar Search. Okay. So let's go back to the Scholar homepage. I'm going to do that by just clicking here, clicking on Scholar, and you can see that link right there, Advanced Scholar Search, takes me to, guess what, the Advanced Scholar Search page. The great thing about this is you can specify all kinds of things using special operators that, frankly, I can't remember and you probably won't remember either. What's nice about this is I can do interesting kinds of filters with properties that are otherwise difficult to get to. So, for example, I can filter by author name, articles written by, and then I insert the author's name. Notice that sometimes you'll want to do variations on that name. So you might want to do, in this case, P.J. Hayes, or Philip Hayes, or Phil J. Hayes, and so on. You can also filter by time. So I can filter, for example, on articles that have been published in a particular date range. Note below, in the articles, in the collections area, you can filter by topics. So I can say, for example, find articles written by Dan Russell only in engineering and computer science. So if you use author search, one way to think about this is it's like using the author : search option in the ordinary search query. So for example, you can see here, author : flowers. That's fantastic if you remember that, or you can use Scholar Advanced Search. But one thing you might want to do is to say flowers minus author flowers. Okay? What that does is it says, give me all the topics, all the articles about flowers without the author whose name is flowers. See the difference? This is an important distinction because it allows you to very carefully select authors whose name are very common or have unfortunate overlaps with real-world things like, say, flowers. Note also, if you're looking for names that have a lot of variations like Don Knuth or D. Knuth or D.E. Knuth, you can quote those by using our double quote operator. You can also restrict on the publication, that is, the Journal of, say, Finance or the Journal of Experimental Biology. Again, you might want to search for variations, for synonyms, for example, j.x.biology or bio. Okay? So remember those different kinds of options. Use the OR operator to explore different variations on that. Journal of Experimental Biology or j.x.bio. Use that as a trick in order to expand the reach of possible options, possible alternatives for the key publication name that you're searching for. Remember that we have all the advanced search operators, cite, file type, minus, and so on. One thing to remember about Scholar Search that's different from regular search is that here, the plus operator means forced inclusion. That is, in regular Google search, you would say in text : than the phrase you want to be sure is on the page. In Scholar, you have to use the plus operator. I know that's a variation from the usual thing. That's the way it goes. Someday, maybe we'll get this all straightened out. But until then, remember in Scholar, the plus operator forces the inclusion of that word or that phrase on the page that you're searching for. Now, when you use Scholar, oftentimes if you're a regular user of it, you might want to set up preferences to reflect your ordinary use of that. If you click on the Preferences option, which is below the Advanced Search link, it'll take you to a page like this. So what you can do in the Preferences is, for example, change your search language. You can search default in your language that you normally work in my case, English, but you can, for example, if you're an Asian languages scholar, check these boxes to get Chinese, traditional or simplified, Korean, or Japanese. So that is the language in which you'll be searching. You can also then specify things like the number of results you want to see. So if you don't want default 10, but want to default to say 30 or 40, you can do that. You can open your search results in a new browser window, and so on. An important thing to notice here is this library links here. So I can, for example, do that WorldCat operation, but limit it just to a particular library, say Harvard, Stanford, Yale. One thing to note is that when you get all done with these different options, say exporting your citation into BibTeX or searching legal journals, you have to save the preferences. Don't just hit the back button. You might select all these preferences, but be sure you see in the lower right corner the Save Preferences option. Don't forget that. Otherwise, all your work will be been for naught. Okay, now, one of the things you can do is if you go to this URL /searchbox, this gives you an option for actually adding these custom searches, like you see right here, the Google Scholar with the search box to the right or just below. You can actually extract that HTML and use that to embed the Scholar search onto your website. It's a fantastic thing to do if you're trying to build a site for your university library or for your, say, K-12 school library. This gives students immediate access to Scholar without having to remember how to navigate through all the different options. Now, as I mentioned, we have a connection already built in for Scholar to find this book or this article in a library. You can also have other kinds of links using the library search thing. So that's another way to get into WorldCat thing we just discussed. Okay? Remember, this searches public libraries and academic institutions worldwide. I don't remember the exact number, but I think there are many tens of thousands of libraries that participate. So this is actually a great meta-catalog tool to remember how to use. Now, if you're a member of a library that actually has a thing called a link resolver, this is a really handy thing to know. A link resolver, just so you know, is a tool that allows you to go from Google Scholar and resolve links to articles in your academic institution's catalog. That is, your librarian will set up a link resolver so that when you do a Scholar search, it searches not only the complete compendium of Google Scholar articles, but also the contents of your local library. This is a little bit like search in a library, but what this is for your local library. If you don't know what a link resolver is, don't worry about it, but if you need a link resolver for your library, you can find out how to install it relatively easy. Another really great feature of Google Scholar is that starting about a year and a half ago, we started including legal results and opinions in the text, the corpus of Google Scholar. What you can do, for example, is, as you see here, search for a decision, a legal opinion like Dred Scott versus Sanford. If you choose the legal opinions and journals option, what this will do is search through the corpus of all of the content in legal space that we've indexed. Let me show you that. So let's go back to Scholar, go back to the home page, and I'm going to do a famous decision, Roe v. Wade. In this case, I want to click the option Legal Opinions and Journals. Do that search, and you see here, these are all actual opinions and articles from various legal journals. So in this case, I'm using that filter, and I'm going to say, well, let's do it since 2000. I can filter on a time restriction like that. and I include citations and at least summaries. So you have different ways of filtering those results. It's really handy to be able to do this if you're trying to do scholarship on legal issues. A really nice thing to do is you can search for common phrases. One of the things about the way law is practiced is that they use these sort of boilerplate or stereotypic phrases. Here's one: a reasonable expectation of privacy. Double quote that phrase and you'll find every instance of that phrase within the legal journals and opinion space. So this is a particular kind of phrase that you'll see in multiple articles. So if you do that, you can instantly find all the references to that. Now, here's the trade-off. Google Scholar is open to you. It's free to use anytime, any place. Trade-offs are that first, it doesn't have an easy way to look for really important legal issues. So for example, Westlaw has this feature called KeyCite, which automatically extracts out the specific issues and authorities. Google Scholar doesn't have that. Google Scholar also does not have a way to shepherdize case material, case information. Lexis has a nice tool called Shepherd Citation Service, which allows you to determine if a particular finding is still good case law or not. So in Google Scholar, you have to go through and actually manually do that check. This is a function that we don't have yet. This is one of the reasons why you still might want to use those paid services. Two more restrictions to keep in mind. Federal case law in Scholar only goes back 80 years. On the other hand, if you need case law that goes back more than 80 years, you probably have bigger problems. Second thing to remember is state case law goes back only 50 years. We're working to actively push those boundaries farther and farther back. But remember, if you're looking for something from, say, 100 years ago, state case law, you're not going to find it in Scholar. But check back, those boundaries will change. Now, one of the things that Scholar also provides is a function called citations. So let me show you what a typical citation would look like. Now, here's one for a scholar I picked who has a pretty well filled out one. This is a pretty typical one. You have the scholar, his affiliation, the citations since 2006, the past 5 years, and you can see here a little bar chart for citations to those articles. Below, you actually have a list of the most highly cited articles this person has done, and in theory, this is a complete list. Okay, let me show you another one. I'll show you, that was a typical scholar. Here's a very high-end scholar, Richard Feynman, you probably heard about, who has, in this case, an astounding 45,000 citations. Now, since he passed away a few years ago, the number of citations since 2006 is going down a little bit, but he's still a highly cited author. Here's an interesting thing to note. His H-index and his I-10 index, these are measures of how influential a scholar is. You can, if you roll over it, it'll actually give you the definition here and pop up a little pop-up definition here. So 51 and 79, those are extremely high numbers. And you can see the lectures and the things that have been really important in the field. Just for contrast, because I know what I do, I'll show you here what it looks like when you're actually looking at a typical computer science researcher. My H-index is nowhere near 59, but I have a fair number of articles, and you can see the sort of citation index growing over time. So that's an idea. You can look at scholar citations to actually understand what a particular scholar is doing. This is really useful when you're trying to understand an area. So, for example, let's go back to coral bleaching. I might want to identify some of the scholars who write articles about coral bleaching and see what other articles they've written, what their citation index is, and what co-authors they have. This is one way to do it. Okay, let's turn our attention now to news. As you know, Google News is an aggregated feed from many, many different resources. We have about 65,000 different feeds that we take from around the world. We integrate them and pull to the top the articles that are most reflective of a particular story. These are updated constantly, so when you go to a page today, it will be different than, say, when you went to it 4 hours ago. It's kind of constantly updated. Think of it as the front page to a really global newspaper that's constantly being updated. One thing to know is it's being updated by algorithms rather than by human editors. So it may not reflect exactly the bias of a particular place, but it is a nice sort of global aggregation of content. On the other hand, if you're logged in, you can personalize the paper to your interest, and that's what you're seeing over here on the left. Here we see a bunch of top stories. These are filtered based on the things I've looked at before. And before you ask, the reason Britney Spears is in there is because that's a common search query we use at Google. So when we're testing, that's why Britney Spears appears so high in my, my list here. But you can also see that I live in Palo Alto, so my newspaper, my web feed, I have a bunch of specialized content for Palo Alto. Okay, so that's how news works. How can you use it to get your task done? Well, one of the things you can do with news is filter by time. So just as you can, for example, in Regular Scholar, filter the scholarly papers by time and year, you can filter at a more granular level on news by filtering within the past hour, the past 24 hours, the past week, and so on. You can also give custom ranges here. So I want to search just from, say, January 1, 1945 to December 31, 1946. You get just that 2-year period. One thing to note is this set of options on the left-hand side, these time restriction options will change depending on the query. So this is now today's current topics. I'm going to search for, say, Japan. And you'll see the left-hand options here change quite a bit. Let's do a different topic. Let's say do Africa. And you see we have a different set of options here. These options are reflective of roughly how much content is generated within that period and the kind of queries that people do over time. So this is a measure for where the interesting bits are. In this case, for Africa, just over the past, say, 4 or 5 years. One thing to know is that Google News has a set of newspapers that have been archived. These are papers that have been scanned in and OCR'd so that you can actually do searches across them. So if we go to this site right here, news.google.com/newspapers, you can see we've got a fair number of articles of these are different newspapers that have been scanned in. So I'm going to find the San Jose papers. And here we go, San Jose Daily News. Now notice, we have 199 different issues. This isn't a complete scan of everything, but it gives you a sense for when this paper was active and when the scans that are available. So here we go. The first set of scans is from January 1886. So this is nicely archival. It's a great way for students to get into the topic of their particular local area and start to understand what's going on historically. So I'm going to click on this first image here, and you can see this is a really interesting set of things. I'm going to click in a little bit more, and you can start to see in 1886, people are already advertising Japanese Christmas presents. In this case, this is articles that were imported from Japan for sale in San Jose. It's a fascinating way to sort of get a sense for the history of a place and what was considered to be important news. And just so you know, there were lots of ads on the front page. So we now think of ads on the front page as being somewhat scandalous, a little bit mixing of news and commerce, but in truth, this is actually quite an old practice. You can also get a sense for what some of the prices were. So you can go around and look at, say, a $4,300 mortgage on a property in downtown San Jose. I think it's a little different these days. So that's /newspapers. That's a great resource to know about. You can also browse in that archive. So just as I was showing you, we were looking at a particular page, you can also very quickly move back and forth in time and get a sense for how news and history progresses on a particular topic in a particular location. You can search, as I mentioned, within a particular time span. This is a really nice thing to do for particular kinds of topics. So for example, the word Bosch. How is that word used in different time periods? So for example, it was used, as you can see here, to refer to a particular group of people during the First World War and then again during the Second World War. Using news filtering, time filtering like this, you can easily get in and see the original uses of those words or phrases and start to understand how things start to link together, how ideas change over time. Let's turn our attention to patents. Google has a feed from the US Patent Office, and so far, we only have the U.S. Patent Office. Hopefully in the future we'll expand to patents search worldwide, but currently it's English only and only in the U.S. Patent Office. But you can see when you go to the patent page, let's actually do that now. I'm going to click on even more. I'll get to patents. And here we go. One thing to know about patent search is it's almost always the case that you want to use advanced search. Yes, you can do searches from this homepage right here, but I recommend actually clicking on the advanced patent search link like this, which gives you all the options. So for example, I might want to find patents that have been assigned to, say, Google, and I can just do that search now. And the assignee field is the holder of the patent. After it's created, all patents are assigned to some person or corporate entity. In this case, you can see everything that's been assigned to Google. So let's go back to that advanced search page, and I'll fill in, let's say, the inventor, I want to search for Sergey Brin. I'll just put in Brin, his last name here. Now you can start to see patents, in this case, information extraction from a database. Let's look at that. You click on that link and you can start to see the front page. In fact, you can get to the entire contents of that patent. But I can verify that this, in fact, is assigned to Google, inventor Sergey Brin. And here I can start to see how to get all the drawings, the description, the claims, and everything. So patent search, USPTO, use advanced search, because that's probably where you're going to want to go. Or if you're a really sophisticated patent searcher and you do this kind of for a day-to-day basis, you might want to learn those kind of keyword operators in Inventor, in Assignee, and so on. When you fill out that form and hit enter, you can see those keywords, those keyword operators at the very top. Okay, we talked about Scholar News and patents. Let's turn our attention to public data, because Google's got a bunch of public data and it's available in a way that's handy for students and something you might want to explore a little bit on your own. So for example, we can go to this google.com/publicdata/home. This is the home page we see here. Let's go take a look at that. The first thing I might want to do is to look at the directory to get a sense for the kind of public data that's available. So here you can start to see there's a bunch of stuff from the UN, from Eurostat, and we can, for example, let's look at the US population. This is from the Census Bureau. We've uploaded this data, created a data set, and now you can visualize it. I'm just going to compare, let's compare it by state. I click on the state link there. Let's click on population. And what's happening is it will download the data and make it viewable to you by different kinds of filters, if you like. So here I'm looking at the entire US population over time from 1981 to a current population. But what I can do here is to say I don't want to compare all US, I just want to compare, say, California against all of the US with Alabama. So here we can see the yellow line is Alabama over time. California, you can see slight growth there. And if you click around here, you can start to explore different data set relationships. Now, one of the nice things about this is you can actually upload your own data. You can create your own data set, upload it, and visualize it using the Google tools available here. Click on My Data Sets, the link to explore how to create and format your own data set for your own exploration. We have a lot of different data sets available. I encourage you to go look around. One is, for example, the unemployment rate. The nice thing you can do with that is compare different counties. So here, for example, we have overall California unemployment rate in blue. Now I've shown how to look at Santa Clara and Imperial County also on that same graph. Why does Imperial County have such a giant range of variability? Well, I'll tell you, Imperial County is a very agricultural county. So you can see here all the seasonality effects. So see that particular pattern year to year? So there's high employment in summertime, and then there's a peak around harvest in the fall. There's a low dip at the end of the year. You start to see interesting detail here. Contrast that, say, with the pattern in Santa Clara County, which is a highly industrialized county, somewhat different. You can also, as I said, compare employment rates. You can compare population. Here I'm showing you a contrast between Uganda, which has a fairly active high growth rate, with a place like, say, Austria, which has a little bit of a decline over the past 10 years. Explore this data. Very easy. You can't break anything, but you can learn a lot about the world. Another resource we have for scholarly and educational activity is to use video. Now, you know about YouTube, but here's the thing. Video.google.com, that is the entire suite of everything we have indexed in video, is actually much bigger than YouTube.com. It's a proper subset. That means when you go to video.google.com, you're actually searching all of YouTube, plus a lot of other video sites as well. Now, one thing to know is that there's a lot of stuff out there, some of which is, well, you know, there's a lot of junky video. There's lots of cats falling off things to look at, but there's also lots of really great video. Let me give you a couple of examples. One thing to know is that there's a bunch of educational videos that are out there. The Education channel at YouTube has a compilation of interesting lectures from a number of well-regarded resources. Here, when you go to the homepage, you can see a lecture by Stephen Hawking. You can understand interesting research reports about doodling in math, and you can actually get to the full content of the Khan Academy. We also have other channels, for example, the TED Talks channel. Here you can actually go see the talks that were presented at TED and get these nice 12, 18-minute lectures on a variety of topics, often from the best people in the field. This is something well worth exploring, and I've spent many happy hours learning stuff I never thought I'd learn through the mechanism of the YouTube channels on TED. Another kind of way of thinking about video on the net is that there's stuff on there that you might have never thought about. This is an example I often use, talking about how to use video in classrooms. This is a video, the actual archival video of the Wright brothers' first flight at Kitty Hawk in North Carolina. The fascinating thing to know about this is when you watch the video, it becomes clear that this plane is flying what looks to be backwards. If you look carefully here, you can see that the Wright brother flying is actually pointing towards the camera. That is, this plane is flying from right to left. It has the little wing in front called a canard, which is the leading wing, opposed to what we have now, where we have the big wings in front and the little wings in back. Next time you see a plane, you'll realize the little wing is in back these days. At the beginning of flight, the little wing was in the front. Looking at a video like this makes that point instantly clear. There's also a ton of really great content. For example, if you're trying to understand how World War I affected people, searching for a search term like oral history and then major news event, oral history of World War I. This is a great way to actually hear the stories from the people who lived through it, telling it to their friends, telling it to their family, or telling it to professionally produced videos. In addition to all that other stuff, we also have, as you know, Google Books. Google Books includes lots of different kinds of things. Now, one of the things you might need to know about Google Books is we have basically two parts to Google Books. There's the part where we're trying to sell books. That's the interface you see on the right here. Then there's, when you're trying to research a topic, we have the ordinary search interface on the left-hand side. One thing to know is this is an incredibly handy way, using the find in a library trick, to look for materials that are difficult to find, materials that are archival, or just plain too expensive for you to purchase. So you can, for example, look for a book like this using the advanced search feature, and you can find exactly where that book is. Then click on Find in a Library, and you'll go immediately to the OCLC and find that book wherever it's located in the world. Alerts is another major topic I wanted to talk about. What an alert is, it's basically a standing query. It's as though you sat down every morning, first thing, and typed in the query, looked for what was new in the search results, and then emailed it to yourself. That's what an alert is. What it will do is allow you to scan the news, scan through groups that are online, scan through webs, scan through video, and so on. So what it basically allows you to do, as you can see here in the interface, is you type in a query, the kind of query you would like to run every day, choose how you would like to see it. You want to scan it over everything, you want to see the result once a day, and so on. You can basically set this filter to run every day. So I have a bunch of these things running. Let me actually show you this. Google.com, and the way I get to it is I search for alerts. I search for Google Alerts. I click on the first link here, and here I am. I'm at my personal Google search alerts. So I want to create a new one. So let's look for Google Guide to New Material. Okay. So here what I'm doing is on the right-hand side is running that search live. So in this case, there were no results. So this is not particularly good or interesting kind of search to do. So let's just take out the Google there. And what I want to find is Guide to New Materials. So for example, nanotech. Okay, there's no results for that. So let's take off the nanotech. We at least had something there. Now if I say create alert, what this will do is will mail me the new updates that Google finds every day on this topic. Really handy when you want to monitor what's going on in a topic of interest to you. It's like having your own personal news agent go and find this stuff and give it to you daily. So let me wind up here with a couple of quick comments on other systems that are out there that you can use for scholarly searches. This is a very big topic, and I'm only going to touch on a couple that are really interesting. There are many, many other kinds of resources to know about. The first thing I want to point out is that Microsoft also has a version of Google Scholar. Theirs is called Academic Search, and it has a couple of nice features. Here, for example, you can see my set. You can compare the Google Scholar results with this. This is the same person. You can see that they order their publications slightly differently than we do in Google Scholar. They give you a slightly different way to view the results over time. They also compute the index, so you can see the G index in this case and the H index, slightly different. Why am I showing you this? Because sometimes it's useful to take different perspectives on the same topic. So if I'm searching for something and say a topic I'm interested, say coral bleaching, I might want to come to Academic Search and see who the important authors are there, compare that, contrast that with what Google Scholar says are the important authors. You can often find leverage by triangulating multiple perspectives on a topic. Academic Search also has an interesting way to look at connections between authors. So in the sciences, there's this funny thing called the Erdos number, named for Paul Erdos, this mathematician right here on the right-hand side of the screen. My Erdos number is the shortest path between co-authors who've written with another person who've written ultimately with Erdos. So I wrote a paper with Tom Gruber, who wrote a paper with Matthias Müller, who wrote a paper with Ernest Neubauer, who wrote a paper with Paul Erdos. Therefore, my Erdos number is 1. Nice way to sort of visualize that. You can also visualize how I'm connected to other co-authors. This is a way of sort of expanding along that citation path. So you can see people who I've worked with a great deal are, for example, Malcolm Slaney, there's Tom Gruber, Andreas Dieberger, and so on. These, if you start to follow these other authors, can give you other perspectives, other ways that they have expanded on a topic. So this is a neat way to sort of see who else people have been working with. Put your favorite author in the center and see who they've been writing with. Another system that's worth knowing about is Wolfram Alpha. You can go to the Wolfram Alpha site and learn all of their examples, but I just want to show you one to give you an illustration, give you a flavor for how it works. In Alpha, it's a great resource for doing science, technology, education, and math kinds of material. For example, you can do a query like this one. The weight of a sphere of water, 2 microns in diameter. I type that in, and it gives me this very nice result. It tells me it's 4.19 times 10 to the minus 12 grams. Tiny little weight. But what's nice about this is it gives you an explanation for how it reached that value. So here, the weight of a sphere, and you can see it's showing you the assumed diameter, which extracted properly from my query, and the material that it's working over, which is, let's say, water. That gives you a guide that's actually interpreted your query correctly. Again, valuable resource for doing fairly high order math. You want to do, say, a regression over a small number of values, come to here and you can get it very, very quickly. It's worth exploring in and of itself. A big question for all of us is how do we as scholars, as people who try to write intelligent, interesting, deep papers, Stay on top of what's going on. Here's one way. There are a number of blogs that are worth reading. I suggest you subscribe to at least one of these as a way of staying on top of what's new in the world. The Scholar blog is here, Google scholar.blogspot.com. I write a blog which has 2 or 3 posts a week called Search Research. That's the first one you see there. It doesn't actually matter which one you sign up for, but in order to stay on top of all this stuff, because all of this technology, all these resources are changing dramatically day to day, you need to sign up for one of them in order to stay in touch. Part of our job is to make sure that you can understand what's possible, but part of your job is to stay in tune, stay in touch. And this is a nice way to do it. So in this lecture, I've tried to show you a little bit about how Scholar works, what news does, and different ways to get at things like patents and video data, books, and so on. We try to give you a set of tools to allow you to filter, to allow you to extract interesting content. The takeaway here is there's a lot of stuff. You need to stay on top of it. Keep exploring. It's the only way you're going to keep on track of what's going on.